Yeah, it sounds like, and this is we get into the maybe virtue signaling a little bit in some of the messaging is, it sounds like all you're saying is just a carnivore harder, right?
Well,
And
no,
that's not gonna solve anything, just doing it, I'm doing it wrong? How could I be doing it wrong?
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Yesterday I did a reaction video to Lisa Wiedemann, who put out, it was basically her response to all of the blowback, given that she has started incorporating carbs into her diet. She was a carnivore for like 15 to 16 years. And she's recently changed the way she eats. And there's like, there's a big to-do in the community. Everybody's talking about it. It's like a big deal. Again, I don't care what anybody eats, but I'm here to basically tell my story of what I eat and how I found relief on the carnivore diet. I'm also, in case you don't know and you're new to the channel, I am a pharmaceutical chemist and a medical technologist. I have multiple degrees in the sciences. I also went for chemical engineering for a while. I used to be a professional student, So as far as science goes, like that's been my entire life. So I've had over 30 years of, medical establishments, hospitals, labs. I was a pharmaceutical chemist, and then I worked my way up into the pharmaceutical industry to management and quality assurance, things like that. So I oversee manufacturing processes in facilities. From a quality perspective, I'm a liaison to the FDA. So now I do medical devices. I left the pharmaceutical industry because I believe they're doing more harm than good, and it's very corrupt. Typically with medical devices, they tend to help humanity as opposed to harm them further. So I'm here in the nutrition space to discuss what I found, which was that I had at least seven medical conditions, and I resolved them all with the carnivore diet, with eating animal products. I have tried vegan, I've tried paleo, I've tried everything under the sun previously, and I did give each of these things a chance, and nothing would help me. Doctors couldn't help me. All they did was get me hooked onto, well, not hooked, I mean, I wasn't addicted to it, but an opioid pain reliever for 17 years. And there was a myriad of other things that I had wrong with me. And I went carnivore and found that all of them disappeared, and it pissed me off. So I am here to tell you my experience. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to share what happens to me, because odds are there's a lot of other people out there who are eating inflammatory plants, who can't find relief, who are sucked into the medical industrial complex and given drug after drug after drug. That's the people who I think could benefit from my story. So that's my take in a nutshell. I do follow Anthony Chaffee, and I respect him as a physician. He seems to give very good advice, to me, at least, in my opinion. Everything I've seen of him, I liked. He goes into detail about a lot of different things. So I figured, one of the things that happened in Lisa Wiedemann's, the video that she did about the reaction of the response of the community, is she pulled a tweet, what wasn't a tweet, I think it was an Instagram post up from Dr. Chaffee, where he was saying it could be, if you were gaining weight, it could be to dairy and alcohol and I don't know, something else. But he was basically giving his opinion on what he thought was the reason that she was having issues, and she got very offended by it. I read the Instagram post, and you can see it for yourself in the video, and I'll put her video below so you can go see that. I didn't read it as being hateful or anything, but I mean, I don't know what kind of comments she's getting. She might have a lot of people being nasty to her. I mean, that's the internet, man. Everybody just is. So I don't know what she was dealing with or whatever. So it might have had to do with collectively, you know what I mean? She just felt attacked, which is not cool and not okay to do. So I wanted to give kind of a reaction to the other side of this big debate that's going on. And Dr. Chaffee did a live stream. It was it was today. So he did a live stream today with two other, I guess they're like coaches. They're all like super beefy and, in the workout space. So again, these are people who are giving their perspective from not just a nutrition standpoint, and Dr. Chaffee gives it from a medical standpoint. But these people are like, they're gym bros. They're like working out and making muscle. So a lot of their perspective has to do with what's important to them. Anyway, I want to watch this and react to it because I think it's important to show both sides. So why don't we get to it?
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this live, sort of impromptu live setup today with my friends Coach Bronson and Carnivore JT. Coach Bronson had this idea to address some of the weird stuff that's been happening lately, sort of with people dropping out of carnivore, people saying you have to go super lean carnivore, people say you should add back in carbs or you'll die. So Bronson, what were some of the things you were concerned about you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, I think I'll just go over, I guess, really.
I have not heard the you're going to die thing, but I have heard the you're going to get Alzheimer's, you're going to be diabetic, you're in a couple of other things, other conditions. But I haven't heard anybody say you're going to die. So that's pretty extreme if people are saying that.
Just what I'm hoping to get out of this conversation. There's a lot of people making changes to their individual habits, the way that they do whatever they're doing nutrition wise.
And for once, that whatever that it sounds like a toddler in the background, it's not our toddler. So, which is kind of comforting to me because I always got a baby screaming in the background sometimes. Well, not always, but.
And there's a lot of emotion behind it that I'm hearing. There's a lot of people getting triggered. There's a lot of people taking offense. There's a lot of judgment. And this is not just on the influencer side or the content creator side. This is also in the community. People are being very dogmatic about the way that we're, the carnivore diet or the keto diet. And I just want to use this opportunity with the three of us talking to kind of say, look, this isn't about what any one person is doing in their life. This is more about how we're perceiving it and the things that we're doing based on what other people are doing. And I think there's a disconnect there. But then also clear up some of the confusion, because I know I think I've heard you mention this, Dr. Chaffee. There's a lot of people who this has helped. This way of eating has helped and are now afraid of continuing it because of some of the things that they're hearing. And I want to address directly some of those scientific claims that are being used as the reason, as the justification for why people are making changes.
True. Like that's what bothers me about some of the approach to this and some of the back and forth in the community is that I know for a fact, the only thing I can speak of for a absolute fact is that I tried everything, every diet, okay, me as a person, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker. Some of the diets made me sicker. Some helped to lose some weight, but losing weight is not the same, is not equivalent to being healthy. I mean, you need to lose weight to be healthy, but if you're just looking at this diet for weight loss, like it's not the same as a person who's looking at it to be healthy. And even just for an example of that, when I got down to my goal weight, which was 135 pounds, like I'm not really happy with 135, but I know that is a healthy weight. That is the perfect weight for my height, basically, as far as health goes. It's perfectly healthy. Do I want to lose 10 more pounds? Yeah. You know why? It has absolutely nothing to do with my health. It has to do with vanity. It has to do with how clothes look on me or something. But that has nothing to do with your health, which is fine. And I don't know, I may do it, but, I don't know, do another fat fast and see if that gets me down to, 10 less pounds. But I'm wondering if it will because, I'm 5'8", and I don't know where I'll end up or what'll work, but I might try it. But anyway, that's important to remember. Like these guys, when they actually, and I'm speaking for them here, but I would assume they're all three like fitness guys. They work out. Their physique is probably very important to them. So when they're eating things, they're probably keeping in mind what that goal is. Not saying that they're all not trying to eat to be healthy too, but it sounds like to me from what I know of these people that, they're gym bro type guys. So in addition to like Dr. Chaffee being a medical doctor, but It's just something that you have to think about when you're looking at someone talking about what their experience is. That's their experience. So it's going to be interesting to hear what these guys. I'll shut up now.
Yeah.
And then finally, just really overall, just remind everybody that it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. You have to focus on your results and what's working for you, right? No matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody does, none of it matters. Just because everybody loves JT or you or me, and they get their information from us, doesn't mean they have to try to do what we're doing, right? The three of us, we all do carnivore differently, right? And the things that we've seen and how we do stuff has helped us make our decisions for our lives. But I don't do anything because JT does it. I don't do anything because you do it. So just understanding that we have to take information, but it doesn't dictate what we do.
Yeah.
I could not have said that any better. That was excellent. That is exactly how I feel about things, is that I can't tell you how to eat. I can't tell you what your situation is, and everybody's different. One of the things that I said in the previous video that I did on the response I was talking about with Lisa Wiedemann is I was talking about how my sister and I were raised in the same house. We had the same parents, and I could eat literally anything I wanted, and I never gained a pound, and I was stick thin, okay, for a very long time. She, however, could even look at a dessert without gaining weight, and she had a terrible time with obesity. She still does. Okay, if everyone could eat if you could prescribe the diet for everybody, then why is that the case? You know, we are born with whatever we're born with. Okay, there are differences between people, you know, and you have to keep that in mind. Everybody's different.
And that's a thing that I've had a problem with. It's people eat whatever the hell they want. I've never cared about that. But when people are going around saying that if you don't include carbohydrates, you are going to hurt yourself. You are going to destroy your metabolism. You're going to destroy your thyroid. You're going to spike your cortisol and give yourself some sort of Cushingoid syndrome, even though ketogenic diets are used clinically in hospitals to treat Cushing's disease and other hypercortisol states.
Yeah, I have a problem with that too, but that is people making definitive statements.
That I have a problem with, saying that will happen unequivocally, even though the vast majority of people have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They've never had any sort of issue. They've never had anything but positives. And there are, a few people that, feel that they need to add back in carbs for whatever reason. But, a lot of them are even saying that their cortisol is fine, their thyroid is fine. And so why are you saying that's going to destroy your cortisol and it's going to destroy your thyroid? When the evidence is against that, the literature is strictly against that for the long-term human data in ketogenic diets. And, it doesn't even pass.
What he's saying about ketogenic diets, it's been hundreds of years, I believe they've been using that. They use it to treat epilepsy. So ketogenic diets are nothing new. When you're in ketosis all the time to treat disease, that's a thing. So that's established. He's not speculating of could be or maybe or things that he doesn't know about. So I appreciate people who do that. If they don't know something, they say they don't know. They can say what's maybe likely, what they've witnessed, what they observed, what the metrics are among the populations, but they don't say, I know this is going to happen to you, or you better be careful, or that kind of thing.
The smell test. I mean, there's entire civilizations who've never eaten carbohydrates and they don't have any of those issues. And so scaring people, saying this is going to happen and bastardizing the biochemistry, which pisses me off because that's, my degrees in molecular and cellular biology and chemistry. And it's like these people going, they've never studied biochemistry. They've never taken OChem, and they going around saying, well, this is how this works. It's like that dude's never even heard of that process. And
he's talking about biochemistry. So as a chemist, I took, I think 2.5 years of organic chemistry. We're saying OChem, I guess. I took 2.5 years of biochemistry. I took extra classes because I was like a super nerd when I was younger. And it is complicated, and it's a lot to understand what's in the textbooks, what's established, And then if you look at carnivore, chemistry, it's different somewhat in some areas because like we're learning about lean mass hyper responders. We're learning that our values and lab tests don't fit a lot of the established ranges because the established ranges are for sick people. And just in general, when you're looking at A1C test, okay, that's based on the life of a red blood cell. Now that test sucks just to begin with, in my opinion, because it's based on the life of your red blood cells, and it's saying that's 120 days. So that fact is a part of that test, but then it's like as an average. But if you look at what the life cycle or how long it actually is, like if in studies they do of determining that, it's anywhere from 70 something to 200 and something, like 270, I'm thinking, I'm just going off of memory, but it's a huge like range. So that, to me, that type of test is like squirts and dog tails. You know, is that what we're measuring things in now? It's just interesting to me that, you know, when you're getting into all this, this is complicated stuff. And a lot of people, you know, are going to start to doze off after the first 20 minutes you start explaining it, you know. So when I'm listening to people talk about this stuff, I understand what they're saying, but I can imagine how A, boring it is to everybody else, and B, I've always seen Dr. Chaffee explain himself really well, and he goes over in normal people words what he means. But I've also seen a lot of physicians in this space like talk over their viewers, and they're talking about, they're using terminology that nobody even knows what they're saying. So I don't like that. Anyway, I'm babbling again. Well, it is a reaction, so I'm reacting.
Until this morning, I mean, I see some of these people, like I remember JT, you did a video talking about gluconeogenesis, and you know, I commented on these posts talking about, they said, well, you know, the body can make.
There's a baby screaming in the background now, so that one's mine. So I'm going to take, you know, I'll take responsibility for that one. It's not this guy's. So, toddler alarm.
Make glucose out of protein from gluconeogenesis, and going off and talking about how this is a stress state. And of course, it's not. Protein catabolism for gluconeogenesis is literally the last stage when you run out of all your fat and you run out of all other resources for gluconeogenesis and energy energy generation. You know, that's when you start catabolizing your muscle and protein in a ketogenic state. And you know, pointing this stuff out and pointing out, you know, glycolysis pathway and these a number of other pathways. And instantly, like the next video they make, they're like, well, yes, there are these other pathways, but they're not the main pathways. It's like, dude, you just heard about this today in the comments and from JT's video. Like, you never heard about this process before in your entire life, because every video you ever done before, you never mention any of these. You just say gluconeogenesis has to be done from protein, and it has to come with high cortisol. It's just, it's so crazy. These people that have never heard of these things before, they literally heard about these processes that morning, like word a day toilet paper, and now they're going around talking as if they're like a professor in the field.
Yeah.
And saying that you're going to hurt yourself unequivocally. That's going to happen. That pisses me off.
Yeah,
and
that's definitely the part that's gotten me fired up as well.
Yeah.
What about you, JT? What have you been hearing?
There's so many different things that are put out by people. I can't study everything that everybody does. That's why I'm speaking in high level terms. I don't know if Lisa Wiedemann has told people that they're going to die if they don't eat carbs. So with respect to her, since I did a video on her, I don't, as far as I know, I don't think she said anything like that. But she's just given her story from what she's saying. She's given her account of things. So since this is related to that video in a way, I just want to make that clear. I don't know that she's ever said anything like that. They're talking about people who have. I absolutely have heard others say those things. So they are being said in the community, and a lot of times by physicians, or either there's some gym bros like that are in this space that are making those claims, which is a little odd because that's kind of not their wheelhouse.
I think the biggest one is just, and you touched on it with the dogmatic approach. I actually had a problem with the carnivore community when I first got in, because I kind of got it my feet wet animal based. But it was the other way around, right? It was like, you have to eat so strict carnivore, and if you include herbs or spices, that's not carnivore, and we're going to crucify you for it. And now we've kind of gone this opposite way, where it's like, well, it's still carnivore, but you include carbs, and you actually have to include carbs, otherwise you're going to have these adverse effects. And I honestly think it's being driven from a couple different places. One, I think there's content creators who are just no longer finding traction with carnivore, right? And I'm finding that myself, right? Had this kind of meteoric growth, and carnivore was popular, and everybody was talking about it. And then people became exposed to carnivore. They heard about carnivore. They've seen all the carnivore influencers. And then social media growth just kind of stagnated, right? It's been that way for the last 6 months, right? And as a content creator, I kind of get that, right? You're always trying to find what's the next big thing, what's, going to hook people's attention. And yeah, you kind of run out of things.
I'm so glad I don't do this for a living. Like, I guess I write fiction novels and things like. I mean, I'm a creator, but I would not want to just do this and only do this. That seems like it would suck, like chasing the algorithm and things like that. Because I talk about stuff that I find interesting, that I know because I find it interesting, other people will. But how many and when, I don't know really. And that's the thing. My mission is to help people understand what I found out, because I was angry. I'm mad that I spent 17 years on an opioid. That pisses me off. And I can say unequivocally that the only thing I did was started eating meat. That was it. I didn't make any other changes. I stopped eating everything else and started eating meat. And keep in mind, I had tried keto, I had tried everything else. For me, that is exactly what cured all these conditions. No other physician was successful. They all failed. All the drugs failed. I can say that definitively for me. So because it worked for me, I'm positive it will work for some people. So that's the kind of message I want to get out, so that you don't have to suffer and you don't have to have a miserable life. So that's my deal.
To say when you talk about the same things over and over again. So I honestly think that's part of it. And I forget the guy's name that I just did the video on that Chaffee you commented on.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that's where he's coming from, right? He wrote a book with Dr. Barry. He's speaking at Hack Your Health, which used to be KetoCon, right?
And that book, turns out, is called Kicking Ass After 50. I don't know what that book covers or what it's about exactly. But Dr. Barry is kicking ass after 50. But I don't know anything about this Zane Griggs, I think his name is. Like, I don't really know anything about him.
He was like a 20-year keto guy. And now all of a sudden he's 60% carbohydrates, and you have to eat carbohydrates. What?
Yeah.
And that then leads into the other thing that I have an issue with is people are speaking in these absolutes, right? There is no absolute. Like, you are going to have this. You're going to have problems. You're going to get heart disease. And I thought we squelched that, right? Like, I did a video probably about a year ago on smoking. It was the study done out of Australia where they followed people who smoked 30 plus cigarettes a day for 30 plus years, right? And they looked at their health outcomes. And as you can expect, they had bad health outcomes. But the number of people that actually had bad health outcomes was not 100%, right? Like, smoking causes cancer, right? Like, that's, if you ask anybody, they'd be like, yeah, of course it does. But it's not a guarantee that you're going to get cancer if you smoke.
Yeah, like, I would eat whole containers of frosting and not gain a pound. And my sister couldn't eat hardly anything without gaining weight. You know?
Right? It's something like 95+% of lung cancer cases have smoking involved, either whether it was secondhand smoke or you smoked or whatever it was. And in an Australia study, it was something like 27% of the people that smoked 30 cigarettes a day got lung cancer. So you go, there's no absolutes in anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, maybe if you drink a bunch of uranium, that's probably going to be an absolute, right? Like,
that's funny that, this goes back to, you hear people saying, like, my grandma drank 3 pints of Jim Beam every day and she ate 40 pounds of bacon and blah, blah, blah. And she lived to be 105. That's a thing. You can have people that abuse their bodies a lot more, but they're, you can, if you had 30 or 50 people who did all of that, when you have this kind of analogy, like, likelihood of them living that long is not really high, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like some people do. I mean,
There's no absolutes in anything, and yet we now have this approach where it's like, you have to eat carbs, you have to do this, you're going to spike this. And then somebody goes, well, it didn't happen to me. And they go, what do they say, right? Like, that's anecdotal. You're just citing a collection of anecdotal evidence. It's literally no different. I think that's part of it. I think the Mark Bell situation highlighted the people just trying to find the new trend with the sugar diet. Like, you can't tell me there's anybody who actually took that seriously. Like, come on. Like, we're eating candy, and like, you're literally eating candy and highlighting that. You're like, I'm eating candy for breakfast. Sometimes I just have a spoonful of sugar. You're like, so Mary Poppins.
You just did something that ties to what you said earlier. That is really, I think, at the crux of why we're kind of pissed off.
And here's the thing about the sugar diet thing. What people fail to realize is that the sugar diet was for vanity purposes. It was only for losing weight, and that is all. Honestly, like, I didn't hear, again, if people were claiming you could cure your diabetes by eating sugar, I didn't hear them say that. All this was centered around was getting ripped and losing weight. So that has not, again, that's like something that people wanted to do just because of weight loss. So I look at that as a different weird thing, as opposed to, diet for health for life type of thing. So
about this whole situation, I agree with you. I don't think many or most of the influencers or content creators that were pushing the sugar diet as a trend really bought into it. I think, like you said, it was a algorithm seeking activity,
or paid. The sugar companies and the cereal companies and things like that. I mean, they've been pushing hard against.
Yeah, very potentially. Yeah.
But I'm going to cut I'm going to cut you off real quick, Bronson. I'm going to touch on what you said, Chaffee. People are going to say, "Oh, it's conspiracy. That's conspiracy." No, there are dietitians, and I did a video on it. There's a dietitian who literally got paid by Monsanto, who is a Bayer company who makes Roundup, to say, "Oh, the glyphosate in your cereal is not that bad." That was literally her video with the tag "paid partnership from Bayer." So there's no conspiracy.
Micro-influencing marketing is growth. Like, that is where things are happening right now from an industry perspective.
What's going on?
And if he had to go get his, I guess his kid or something. That's funny. I like that. I respect that his kid's like, babbling in the background. I don't care. It's like, hey, that's every day for me. But, anyway, what's interesting about this is that people don't believe how corrupt the industry is, and this stuff happens. That is the crux of the food industry. Big food, big ag, big pharma. It is corrupt as snot. If you ever want to look at something that kind of reveals a lot, look at a person called Callie Means. This individual, he's working, I think, with RFK now to try to renovate the dietary guidelines. I think he's a big player in that. I don't know what's going to happen with it. Who knows? This is politics, so I never count on anything. But he did come out, and him and his sister was some kind of surgeon. I think she did like, sinus surgeries or something like that. And she was a well-respected, made tons of money, like established, like went to the best schools surgeon, and she stopped doing it. Or she got out of it, I think, like basically went on this crusade of like what, dietary problems and dietary habits causing health problems. And then her brother, Callie Means, and I forgot her name. I can't remember her name, but they do things together. They do a lot of interviews together. But her brother was working for Coca-Cola, and he basically ran the campaigns. He was a lobbyist. He lobbied Congress and all the payoffs and all of the the studies that are done to make it look like sugar's okay, and everybody needs to drink Coca-Cola and it's not so bad, and the push to keep Coca-Cola on like government programs to help underprivileged people and things like that, like wanting to keep all that junky food on there so that that's like preying on people. It's horrible. So if you haven't checked him out, check out some of his work, because the interviews he does are amazing, because he's really spilling all the beans of that industry. So yeah, they pay people. Pharmaceutical companies have their hands in all kinds of pies, and the truth about what's really going on gets suppressed because people get paid to suppress it. So that's a thing, and that happens all the time, and you never know who's going to do it. Now, I don't know in this space who's being paid or who's a shill, or I have no earthly idea, but it happens,
But to what he was saying, I think the problem and why I'm upset or why I'm hot about this topic is because the content creators may not have bought into it, but the people listening did. The audience that all of these people have, the audience that we have, take what we say very seriously, and they make decisions based off of the information that we provide. And it is irresponsible, in my opinion, for what many of these influencers are doing, particularly on the sugar diet side. But then honestly, even in this space now with this trend, there is I think, an overuse of science to justify personal decisions, number one. And then number two, there is a lack of transparency in, I'm making this decision for whatever reason I'm making it, but then the message is everyone needs to make this decision too. And there isn't a communication of, hey, this is my personal decision. I'm sharing my story. And I've even seen some people say, I'm not telling you what you need to do. This is just my decision, what I'm doing. But then in the very same video, this is going to kill you. If you don't do this, you're going to be unhealthy. It's like, what? That's a mixed message there.
Yeah, I have a problem with that.
And people are getting confused and scared. And, it drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, to the point earlier about how this could be just, chasing clicks and things like that. Like you said, Zane did a book with Dr. Barry. And so, it's been at KetoCon and all these other sorts of things. But he said recently that he's never been keto and he's never done carnivore, that at any point he's never done less than 100 to 150 grams of carbs a day. So he's never done keto, so he was profiteering off of this and trying to hop in on that hype so that he could do something with that from whatever. I mean, he pushes peptides and hormones and things like that, so it's like YouTube. Yeah, so this is a lot of these things can be like a gimmick and a vehicle just to try to push whatever product he's pushing, like the peptides. Here's a quick question: if his diet advice was so great, why does he need peptides? And why do his clients need peptides? I don't use peptides. I don't use hormones. My patients have doubled, even tripled their testosterone level. I've had 6 women come out of menopause in their 50s by just doing carnivore. So, why, if your advice is so great, you need a whole bunch of drugs and peptides and steroids and things like that to affect, any sort of reasonable results, because carnivore actually does it a lot better than that. But, Zane's saying he's at 65% carbs now, and he feels better. Well, of course he does, because when you're eating 100 grams of carbs, 150 grams of carbs, you're in sort of a no man's land. You're not eating low enough carb to be in ketosis to generate your own blood sugar and your own ketones for energy, but you're not eating enough carbohydrates to actually satisfy your energy demands, especially if you're active and working out all the time, which Zane does. I mean, that's sort of has been his life for decades now. So sorry, go ahead.
That's another disparity in the conversation that I think there's not enough people that have practical experience working with the population that most of our audience is made of. And they're talking from it, is particularly when we talk about people that are like us. Like Zane is he's in his 50s, he's in shape, he's been in shape for years, and he's trying to explain things in a certain way, but the people that are listening are not in shape. The people that are listening are no longer unhealthy. The people that
That's what I was talking about earlier, is that you have to know your audience, know who you're talking to. You have to know that if you write books, you have to understand who your audience is. Because if you don't, you're not going to be effective at whatever it is you're trying to tell them, number one. And you're going to be wrong in a lot of cases, because you're not speaking to the people that you need to be speaking to. I mean, the thing is like, gym bros need gym bros to talk to, like, as far as diet goes. And I'm not saying that derogatory. I'm just saying these guys who are super hot, Chaffee. You all know, if you've watched the channel, like, I don't know, maybe we need a eye candy break. How about it? Anyway, okay, back to being serious here. You know, you have to understand who you're talking to. So if you're doing a Gym Bro video to talk about Gym Bro things, you know, like getting ripped and pump you up and all that kind of crap.
Really? I want to give me a gift.
Like, you know, that's going to be in a different context than if you're talking to people about how to become healthier, you know, how to actually in general, or you're talking to people about how to actually reverse medical conditions. You know, it's all because you're talking about inflammation in that respect. And that's why, like, when it comes to Chaffee, like, I agree with basically the way he eats, because one of the reasons is he actually treats patients with this diet.
A lot of times I've spoken to people where they've had, they've said, well, you know, unfortunately carnivore didn't work for me, and it really sucks because I felt so good with it. I had all this energy. I came off my blood pressure medications. This is a real story, actually. Came off of blood pressure medications, came off my autoimmune medication, you know, put these things into remission, and it was great, but I just couldn't lose weight. So I guess it didn't work for me. And to me, I was like, well, that actually sounds like it was working pretty damn well. And
that's the difference between vanity and possibly, I don't know how overweight this person was, but vanity and, you know, actual health, because a lot of times we're wanting a certain goal because of, you know, how we look, which everybody's going to do that. I mean, I do it. So to a certain degree, not as much anymore. I don't put as much weight on that as I used to. Dad joke again. Someone reached through the screen and slapped me right now. Okay. That's got to stop. It has got to stop. I don't know why I keep doing that. Anyway.
Then you ask them, okay, well, what exactly were you eating? You have to say that. What exactly were you eating? And then that comes out. And she was having erythritol, she was having dairy, she was having those sorts of things. And it's just like, okay, well, those are ways to stall your weight loss, and that can be an issue. Also, there's hormonal issues and metabolic issues. I see patients that sometimes will take 6 months to 8 months before their hormones heal, their metabolism heals, their insulin resistance heals, their leptin resistance heals, and then their body's in a position that they can start losing weight. And then they do, and then they lose weight very healthily and rapidly.
Yeah, and you got to remember that if you spent 40 years or longer, or 20, 30, 40 years on the standard American diet, breaking your body down, why would you expect it in 2 months or a month to actually reverse?
For me, I've been very consistent. I eat meat and water, fatty meat and water, and I try to get about 80% calories from fat. And
he's so perfect. Every time I think of the perfect carnivore, you just put it in your mind, like I think of him, like what discipline that must take, you know, because I have to have a little more variety than that. He's always been so strict for the most part. He has talked about times when he, I don't know, fell off a wagon or whatever, he didn't feel good. So.
And I don't count calories or track them. I just eat as much fat as my body is capable of absorbing. So I get soft stools, but not loose stools. And so I know that my body's hit that saturation point for fat. And then 90% of the fat that I eat after that is going to go out in my stools and keep it soft. And so I haven't deviated because I haven't wanted to, because I feel so much better doing this. Anytime little bits of things slip in, I don't feel as good. And so it just doesn't interest me anymore. And I feel great. And my bloods are all great. I've sort of stopped bothering to check my blood work because it's always just been perfect. My thyroid has not dipped at all. If anything, it's gotten better.
And the thing is about thyroid, people are talking a lot about thyroid levels and everything. Again, the normal ranges are, just keep this in mind. I'm just saying it is a fact. The normal ranges are based on a sick fat population. So there could be differences with that. But also, if you don't have any symptoms that your thyroid is dysfunctional, and then you're looking at ranges and they're slightly off of what the accepted ranges are, I mean, that needs to be looked at a little deeper, because if you don't have any symptoms on top of having ranges that are slightly out. But the people that worship the lab test, that basically they don't get up in the morning without getting a laboratory test done. It's like, I can't do anything unless I'm checking all the labs, like going to that extreme. Your body, you need to listen to your body about how it makes you feel, in my opinion. I think my body tells me how, now that I can understand what it's saying because I've gotten rid of all the garbage food and gotten rid of the all the drugs and everything, it speaks to me and I can understand what it's trying to say.
My testosterone is that of a 25-year-old.
I can believe that. Just saying.
But like you said, you have to actually go carnivore to see if it actually works. And that doesn't mean you have to do that for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you have to be in deep ketosis for the rest of your life, right? Like, that's the other thing is people are like, long-term ketosis. Okay, then get out of it.
And like, just for my perspective on that, like, I prefer to be in ketosis always to some degree. And I think Nick Norwitz said the same thing. Like, he prefers to always be in ketosis. Like, that is how I feel my best. I feel amazing when I'm actually in ketosis.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I think it's also important that when someone is having a problem and you want to reassess, it is really simple. It's like you're saying, just remove these things. Like, what else is in there? That's not just animal, meat and water and things like that. If you're worried about weight loss, or you have inflammation, autoimmunity, or something like that, even dairy can be a problem. So you just cut it out. You do 30 days of just meat and water, and you just see what happens. You add some things back in. Say, okay, eggs are fine, dairy's fine, great. And then you find this other thing that was not fine. But the minimum effective dose. It's important to point out too that for some people that's almost everything. Like people with autoimmune issues. I have patients that really suffer if they eat anything except beef and water. Like just anything. I mean, they have a pork chop and they're having bloody diarrhea for 3 days. So it's so they can't even eat non-ruminant meat. They're so.
That's why it's important to understand why you're doing it. Like, are you doing it because you're curing medical conditions? If that's the case, then the best way to approach it is to start out with lion diet and add back in to see what it is. Like he's saying, some people can't eat. There's a lot of people who can't eat eggs. Eggs bother them, but there's a lot of people who can.
Sensitive, these sorts of things. So I think that it does give you a lot to just try that of just pure meat and water, high fat meat and water for 30 days, and then say, okay, well, can I add something back in? I mean, I care nothing about what other people eat with what they decide to do with their lives. This is just trying to give people tools and guidelines. Like we said, just say, hey, look, this is something that these are the principles. We need meat. These are essential nutrients that we have to have. And these other things can cause harm. I've been trying to nail some of these people down because they're making definitive statements in their videos saying this will happen. This is how gluconeogenesis works. This will cause high cortisol. This will cause thyroid dysfunction. And you just point out, well, there's millions of people that don't do that. And the clinical trials in humans, the long-term human data shows that no, that doesn't happen. And then they'll just flip-flop and, oh, you're denying people their truth. I'm like, I never said that. You're denying people's truth because there's millions of people, millions of more people that are saving their lives by doing this. And they get so defensive of carbohydrates. Like, what do you care? It's not your mother. Like, what is going on that you don't say that about carbs. It's just like, trying to make and literally just lying and making things up, saying that there's one statement that said where it said, well, when you have glucose and ketones available, your body chooses glucose over the ketone. So that's a preference. Like, it's literally the opposite. And just Google it. Everybody here, Google that. People are just lying about and making up. And unfortunately, people don't know enough about the history to spot the bullshit, unfortunately. And so people can speak very confidently about things that they have no idea about, and they're just making up. And people buy it, unfortunately, which is why it's so important to call out the bullshit.
I don't necessarily think carnivore is the best weight loss diet, right? I think you definitely can use it for that, but I think carnivore helps you get to a weight that your body wants to be at, right? And I use the term homeostasis all the time.
That's true. That's true. I would say that as well. If you want to get rail thin skinny, like supermodel skinny or something like that, carnivore may or may not. Well, you're going to be a healthy weight. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe you're supposed to be that thin or something and just naturally, but carnivore is going to get you where you need to be the healthiest, in my opinion. That's what I've seen. So
Yeah, let's you mentioned a couple of things there as far as health. Because in this conversation there's a lot of talk about various markers. My thyroid levels, my cortisol, my A1C, et cetera, being used as part of this justification for starting to add carbs. Somehow carbs improves A1C, somehow carbs improve all of these different things. And there are mechanisms that can be looked at and identified where there are changes that improve the marker. But where do we look at the marker versus health? Because they don't always match up.
No, well, I mean,
Right.
in medicine, you say you do not treat lab tests, you treat patients.
mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter what the lab test is.
Thank you for saying that, because that's not the way people are addressing this. Because everyone is looking at a single test that is not supposed to be looked at by itself. And also, you've got to keep in mind that the ranges, we do not, as carnivores, fit into that paradigm. And you're talking about a sick, fat population. That's where these ranges came from. So it doesn't always affect every range, like as hard as others, but you have to keep that in mind, or it's just invalid in a lot of cases.
Is if the clinical picture is very different. You know, if I have someone who comes in and their underarm temperature is perfect, your morning temperature is perfect, their heart rate's perfect, they have their metabolism is perfect, they're able to keep a lean body mass, they're not cold sensitive, they're not intolerant to cold, they're not having brittle hair, dry skin, and nail changes and proximal muscle weakness and things like that. But then I see that their thyroid is slightly below the optimal range. I'm not jumping out of my chair, you know. But if someone is in an optimal range and they have those symptoms, then I'm actually going to do something about it. It doesn't matter what the blood test says. I'm worried about my patient.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. A lot of people looking at, I have to make a change because my marker, right? I mean, I had a couple of years. I mean, I've been following an animal-based whole foods, let's say carnivore diet, for almost 8 years now, and I had a couple of years where my A1C was at least a 5.6, if not a 5.8, for a few years, and I didn't really care. Right. Everything else is fine. I'm still gaining muscle. My sleep is good. My energy is good. I've got my HDL to trig ratio is good. My HOMA IR is good. Everything is fine, but I'm running pre-diabetic. Right. And oh my God, you're going to die. It's going to kill you. Right. Well, is it really though? I have no symptoms. I have no impact on my life. There's nothing else that is indicating that there's a problem. Right? How much of the problems that people are having health-wise following a keto carnivore diet have nothing to do with their food?
Well, I mean,
I see this all the time. Overtraining is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Right. I get people all the time who are like, my cortisol is high. Well, number one, is your cortisol really high? How often are you getting a cortisol test?
And how are you testing it? Because that's super inaccurate to test. The only accurate way to test it is a 24-hour urine sample.
Yep.
And so you have to basically get a jug and urinate in that for the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
No one does that. And so you have to take those readings with a grain of salt.
This is what I'm trying to say is, like, when it comes to lab tests, people don't understand what it is that you can accurately measure, what it is like when they get a result. They're thinking it's because we're super sophisticated and we know everything and we've got this down to a science, and it is accepted, as being valid and accurate. And it's like, not necessarily. And also you have to have it in context, so things are not what they seem. You have to dig deeper.
One of the problems they're having on carnivore is that their cortisol is high all the time. I would put money that they have no idea what their cortisol actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We have this obsession with adherence to the reference range, right? So here's the problem with your HbA1c is it's dependent on the lifespan of your red blood cells. So if your red blood cells live longer, you have more of them, it's measured higher, right? And again, people love to go be like, well, what background do you have or what? Even Dr. Chaffee, they're like, oh, you're a doctor, but you're not that, right? 90% of my information when it comes to insulin and glucose comes from Dr. Ben Bickman, who is a metabolic scientist. And I love that you use the word bioenergetics because his PhD is in bioenergetics, right? Like his entire practice is about cells and energy.
He is an excellent source. Also, he's a very level-headed individual to listen to. He's not like psycho on a lot of things. I would recommend you go follow him because he's definitely a good source for this type of thing.
Right. And you use the term metabolic flexibility. Part of it with the HbA1c is we're so focused on glucose, right? My glucose can be kind of all over the place, right? Like it can spike, it can be super low, it can be super high. It's not the whole story. Right. And just because you have good glucose does not mean that you're healthy. People will do that too. They're like, oh, my HbA1c is 5, it's 4.8. Cool. Your insulin's 10. Yeah. Which is also another ridiculous thing because reference range goes up to like 15. I'm sorry, but if you come in with a fasting insulin of 15, that's not okay. Right. No. You are on the track to something.
But that is normal for a sick and fat population.
Oh, and reference ranges change over the decades. Like we see that with cholesterol all the time.
Yeah, they just actually lowered, I believe, blood pressure so that they can put more people on blood pressure medication. And if you think that's not why they did it, think again. The man behind the curtain is really ugly and is always up to something. So, and as someone who's watched the man behind the curtain, it's like a little analogy for being in the industry, being in dealing with the FDA, dealing with in pharmaceuticals, working working for all these huge companies. You would be very surprised at what the reality of this industry looks like.
Cholesterol keeps getting lower and lower.
They change.
And lower.
They change from lab to lab.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are certain agreed upon standards. So like for cholesterol and things like that, they say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Almost everything else is an average for that lab. So people don't understand this. And I found out about this in medical school. I was blown away. And then I started looking, and there's actually research that says, hey, what's an optimal reference range? All the other reference ranges are just an average. So you in whatever town that you're in, you can go to all the labs in that town, and you can go, they will all have different reference ranges. Why is that? Because every few years when they renorm their ranges, the first few thousand people that walk in the door as clients basically coming here to get a blood test because their doctor sent them in because they are sick, so not a healthy population sample, that becomes the reference range. That becomes the average. And so right here in Perth, where I'm at, I have patients and they'll come in and they're like, they get a blood test and they're normal in one place and too high in another. I'm like, well, which one is it? You know, and if you're a doctor and you're sending someone in and they say like, oh, wow, you're out of the range. Oh my gosh, we need to do something about this. But with that same number, if they went to another lab, it's just luck of the draw. They happen to go to another lab and it's normal. Or maybe it's low, you know, so what is it? That's not useful information for a doctor or a patient to use to alter their behavior, you know, and say, okay, well.
As a scientist, it's not valid. That's not valid. You're too far off the mark, you know, when it comes to doing things like that. So that's crazy, especially the between labs situation. And the fact that you just are basing it on a sick, fat, standard American diet eating population. We don't fit into the paradigm when it comes to a lot of the blood work. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
I need to do something about this, or maybe I don't. So all labs are completely off. So in the labs here, JT, the insulin is okay under 20, right? And that's just because that's that average. It's just like, there's a shitload of people that go up to 20. I'm sure it's fine. And it's not fine. You know, I mean, you go to another lab and it's completely different. And so how, as a doctor or how as a patient, are you supposed to, you know, guide someone and guide yourself if you're basing this off of lab tests that have arbitrary reference ranges, we look at these reference ranges as if they are gospel. This is where you need to be. You need to be in this reference range. This is the ideal reference range, but that's not even how they're advertised.
Mm-hmm.
They're said specific. This is just an average of every Joe Schmo that walked through the door, and 93% of people are considered metabolically unwell. 70% of people in America and Australia are overweight or obese. And most people get sent in for lab tests because they're unwell. Most people are not doing a well baby check. So you're looking at the sickest of a sick population. Also, 80% of calories consumed in America and Australia and Europe are actually plant-based. And so if the working definition of a hyper carnivore is any animal that eats above 70% of its calories from animal sources, then Americans, Australians, and Europeans are all hyper vegetarians. Okay, so we're looking at an average of a sick vegetarian population. Please tell.
Like I said, we do not fit into the paradigm. It's a square peg, doesn't go through the round hole. It doesn't work. It doesn't match. It's not contextual.
Tell me that you don't trust your B12 readings, right? I mean, it's just like this is an average of sick vegans, and you're going to tell me that your B12 is fine if it's in that range? The hell it is. You need to be like double that.
You know, I have people, as a laboratory person, I have people all the time coming up to me, handing me their lab test. You know, and when you're looking at it, and they will be freaking out because, you know, it shows up in red if it's out of range. And I had a woman who is on carnivore, and her cholesterol, I think the normal range went up to 200, and her cholesterol, she hasn't been doing it all that long, but she's noticed a lot of benefits. Her cholesterol was like 204. It was 204. It was something barely out. And she was literally freaking out. You know why? Because it showed up in red. And she literally believed that not being inside of that was like something was wrong with her and she needed to fix something. And just the idea that people don't understand what that is, and that it's sold as being this, you know, absolute, finite, valid range, and that people really put that much weight on it and they don't really understand the behind the scenes of all this stuff, is something I think that physicians, the medical establishment, capitalizes on, you know. So just interesting to think about that. Why would we expect to fit into the paradigm of a hyper vegan society? I don't think we're going to.
Carbs all of a sudden, somehow for the past X number of years, carbs are not essential. I don't need them to. Now all of a sudden I need them to live. And that is using carbs based off of specific mechanisms without looking at how food choices and nutrition in the animal-based whole food paradigm can do the same thing. If you were worried about your cortisol, maybe you should focus on recovery. More is not better, right? There's a lot of these things that we're looking at. Carbs are an easier fix because of a mechanism that does X, Y, or Z, but is it a holistic, quality of life, long-term sustainable option? Because remember, when you're introducing carbs, as we've discussed for the past almost hour, you're introducing a fix based off of a mechanism, but you're also introducing potentially a whole bunch of other downstream problems. So what's the end goal? What are you really trying to do here? In my experience, hundreds of clients over the past several years, everyone thinks they're doing one thing until they start tracking, and then they realize they're doing something completely different.
That's true. It's like eating. If you don't log what you eat, if you're trying to examine, like, I don't know, you're trying to get to the bottom of something, if you don't log what you eat, you'd be surprised at how much you forget about or how much you don't pay attention to. If you're consuming things or you're thinking, well, I'm not doing really anything outside of the norm, and then you start looking at it, you do like a journal. That's a really good tool for figuring out what's going on. Just saying, I did that. I don't do it all the time, but I should probably, you know, because if anything happens, like, I can go back and look, but no, too busy.
So I was going to say, you guys want to know two pretty solid pieces of physiological proof that we don't need carbs. In fact, we didn't evolve on them, but we don't need them or want them. you were talking about insulin, how when you have when you eat protein, you have this sort of this longer curve with protein, and then so your blood sugar is actually quite well controlled when you have that. It's this very, very controlled, moderate rise in insulin that lasts several hours and then it comes down. But when you eat carbohydrates, you have a big jump in your insulin, and then that doesn't match the blood sugar spike from carbohydrates. Your blood sugar goes up, insulin comes up. Now your blood sugar goes down too much and you get reactive hypoglycemia. That's the medical term. And then your blood sugar actually goes too low. And now you have to go and chase carbs. You have to sort of catch up on carbs. And then you're sort of playing this whole game trying to match your insulin.
That's the reason you want to eat all the time. When you're actually doing carbs, you're like constantly eating. Like it's, you're not satiated. You want to keep going back for more, and you get cravings.
And carb and blood sugar levels, right?
Yep.
So that doesn't really match. And interestingly, when you have type 1 diabetics who start going ketogenic and carnivore and things like that, and they're not using carbohydrates, we had to reinvent insulin. Insulin exists. Why do we need Act Rapid, Nova Rapid, Lantus, things like that? These are different forms of insulin that can match different curves, because just normal old insulin wasn't cutting the mustard and wasn't working properly for what people were eating. And so you have to use Act Rapid that can match that big spike and then go away, so that you don't have this big massive drop on your blood sugar and things like that. So it'll match your carb spike. But guess what type 1 diabetics who are just eating protein and fat have to do? They have to use the original insulin, just our insulin, just normal old insulin. And that perfectly matches their protein spike and their protein curve, not the carb curve. So our natural insulin is designed for protein, not for carbohydrates. So that's issue one.
That's very good from a chemical composition standpoint. From you talking about this thing that way it originally looked, and what we had to do to manipulate it to make it work for a society that's eating trash. Like the real insulin wasn't good enough. We had to make it supercharged because of all the trash we're eating and because of the huge because of the huge spikes in glucose.
Number two, your oral health is a window to your overall health, especially your cardiovascular health. People that have worse dentition typically have worse cardiovascular disease and all sorts of other problems and things like that. If you're eating something that rots your teeth, by definition, that is the wrong thing. That is not your natural diet, because in the wild, there are no dentists. There are no toothbrushes. There is no Listerine. And so if your mouth doesn't take care of itself, you will lose your teeth, you'll lose the ability to eat, and you will die.
I've always thought about that. That's put so well, because what I was thinking is before there was mouth toothpaste and toothbrushes, did everybody's teeth rot and fall out? Well, obviously not, right?
So if you are eating something that causes cavities and rots your teeth to the point that you will lose them, that by definition is the wrong thing.
Okay, there's an elephant in the room that I think we need to discuss. And that is, there's a specific demographic that is not represented in this roundtable. Okay, we are not women. We are not in our 40s, 50s, and 60s.
You don't know how we identify, Bronson, so check the record.
That's pretty funny that they're bringing up the fact that, they're three dudes, three gym bros that are not talking about women's metabolism. So this should be interesting.
All right.
So one of the things that I've noticed, and I was thinking about this morning, in the space, I can't think of a single male influencer or content creator that has had this discussion, that has been talking about changing. Every one that I can think of that was keto carnivore and is now introducing carbs to some perspective, unless there's some, and everybody let me know, unless there's someone I'm missing, it's all women.
I think Dr. Kiltz recently has started adding some things back in.
Nope, he actually did a live yesterday where he
Okay.
talked about how he is still carnivore. He's introduced
Okay.
some fish, and he had a potato a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you guys have any particular points or things that you've been seeing in this whole conversation that you want to highlight before we kill this?
Well, just don't believe the hype. Carbohydrates are not essential. They do not provide any benefit on top of what you can already make yourself. It does not cause stress to make your own glucose or ketones. That is our natural, normal, physiological metabolic state. That's a normal metabolic state of nearly every animal on Earth. 70% of animals are carnivores. They eat fat and protein. And
I gotta agree with him on that one.
my patients, I mean, I understand you mentioned that your T3 went down. Mine has not. Mine has not gone down one iota in nearly a decade. And I haven't seen that in my patients either. I promote and I teach a very strict version of this. And so that means no plants that have goitrogens. There's an entire category of plant toxin that causes thyroid dysfunction.
Mhm.
And I say, hey, look, specifically, you're a thyroid patient. Don't eat these things. You need to be very strict.
Yeah, it sounds like, and this is we get into the maybe virtue signaling a little bit in some of the messaging is, it sounds like all you're saying is just a carnivore harder,
Well,
right? And
no,
that's not going to solve anything. Just doing it. Am I doing it wrong? How could I be doing it wrong?
no, the thing is that there are things on this earth that cause harm,
Mhm.
and it's not that you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. Some people just aren't doing it. If you're eating a lot of meat, that's great. But if you're eating a whole bunch of other stuff,
Mhm.
that's not really the same thing. And so people saying, well, you can't do carnivore wrong. Of course you can. You can do anything wrong. You can lift weights wrong. You can hurt yourself. You do the wrong techniques, you can destroy your joints.
So that would be my takeaway. I don't care what you do it for you in a way that works best for you and where you're trying to go. And it doesn't have to be extreme. Minimum effective dose means figure out the lowest hanging fruit that you can pick right now. Right? What's the one small thing you can do that's going to have the biggest impact in where you're trying to go? Right?
Yeah.
So there's a process of change. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be.
I agree with that. You do what you can do, what you can take on, what you can accomplish.
What are your goals? For me, it's optimal health. It's me not putting anything in my body that's going to be harmful to it. I mean, that's my end goal. So there's basically.
Okay, I'm not going to bitch about the 3-year-old anymore because they don't show up in person. So I'm ahead of the game. I usually get frustrated about all the noise coming from the other room, but they don't show up in person. That's pretty funny. Cute kid.
One way to do that, and others might be they want to lose some weight. Other people maybe they want to come off their meds or just want to feel generally better, and just moving in that direction. To your point, getting rid of sodas, doing something in an incremental way, getting rid of the junk food, and just going more whole foods. I mean, that's already a huge step in the right direction. You will improve your health that way, and you can just cut out a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and you will get very serious health benefits.
You said, don't do what I do, right? You got to do what you do because we're in different places health-wise. Take the information, apply it to yourself, try to get healthy. That's really the bottom line, right?
Okay, so my take on all of this is the same thing it's always been, is that, I believe that, I guess you can call me a Chaffeeite. I don't know, maybe I just made up a new word, but I believe plants are trying to kill you. And if you have pain and medical issues, my advice is to go lion diet. If you're asking my advice, this is what it is. Go lion diet, meat, water, and salt to figure out what, or try to get rid of the inflammation and the issues. And then, eat what you want to eat after that. But if you introduce things, I would say introduce them one at a time. What you practically will do in your regular life, like in your day-to-day life, like, there's things that not everybody can be so strict. I know that. So like me, I drink coffee and tea right now. I'm trying to phase them out. Every day I try to get a little better. So let me know what your thoughts are on all of this drama. You know, did you have to introduce carbs? Were you a carnivore and then you had to change the way you eat in order to make you feel better? Or are you still strict carnivore? Or, you know, what do you eat on a regular basis? I'm just interested in all the different people and what their diets are. And did you cure medical conditions? If you did, you know, leave a comment, let me know about it. And if you like the video, if you could hit the like button, I would really appreciate it. And if you want to subscribe, that would be great too. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.